We once assumed, rather naively, that darkness was simply the absence of light, a void with no will, no structure, no substance of its own, merely a passive backdrop against which the universe revealed its splendor. But that belief was shattered the moment we observed the disappearance of D4, the fourth moon orbiting the gas giant Corvus 9, located just beyond the Tau Ceti system. It wasn't destroyed by a meteor, vaporized by a sun flare, or consumed by black hole distortion. It was erased, cleanly, silently, and with a kind of precision that defied every physical law we thought immutable. 12 minutes after we began recording the anomaly, the moon was gone. Not reduced to rubble. Not scattered in orbit. Gone. As if reality had given up on reminds it. At first, we thought it was a sensor malfunction. High radiation interference, maybe some kind of rogue gravitational lensing. But then the darkness began to spread, slowly at first, crawling like oil across the star's cape, absorbing not just photons but information itself. Telescopes couldn't see through it. Signals couldn't bounce off it. AI-based renderings crashed when asked to process its shape. Every algorithm fed with the event's data either produces an empty void, or locked up in recursive error. Scientists from 3 planetary alliances were called in. Theories range from exotic matter leaks to dark energy ruptures. And yet, no one can explain why, in the minutes before the moon disappeared, we detected a sudden, sharp increase in solar radiation coming from Tau Ceti star, followed by a cooling, dimming effect, as though something had inhaled the sun. And that's when the classified footage came out. One recording, smuggled out by a now-missing astrophysicist, showed a jagged silhouette hovering in high orbit above the gas giant. The object didn't emit heat. It didn't reflect light. It devoured it. The space around it shimmered unnaturally, as if time itself was being strained. And from that figure, something not entirely mechanical, not entirely biological, a pulse of darkness emerges. Not metaphorical darkness. Not absent. But something physical. Tangible. A cloud-like mass that moved not randomly, but deliberately. As it expanded, the sun's light dimmed further, and the moon's outline began to blur, then melt, then vanish. Only later, after cross-referencing dozens of silent signals picked up across dead systems, did we begin to formulate the unthinkable. What we were witnessing was not a weapon, not a natural phenomenon, but respiration. It was breathing. The being, if one dares call it that, had come close enough to a star to inhale raw radiation, absorbing photons with every microscopic structure of its anatomy. But unlike plants that photosynthesize or machines that convert sunlight into stored energy, this entity didn't contain the light, it metabolized it. And its exhalation was not waste gas. It was a byproduct entirely foreign to human understanding. It was darkness given mass. A corrosive field of entropy that destabilized matter, erased information, and collapsed structure. It leaves nothing behind, not even ash or radiation. Only silence. This leads to a so disturbing hypothesis that it was immediately suppressed by the United Deep Archive. If such beings exist, and they require light to survive, then they would naturally be drawn to stars, to bask in their heat, feed on their radiation, thrive under their fusion. And wherever they feed, they exhale. Wherever they breathe out, they leave behind that same black material, a kind of dark plasma that corrodes everything it touches, not through heat or acid or force, but by unweaving it from reality itself. The most terrifying part wasn't that we had encountered such a species. It was the realization that we may have seen them dozens of times before, and simply hadn't understood what we were looking at. Because they don't travel in ships. They don't send messages. They don't invade or announce their presence. They arrive quietly, basking in the heat of stars like predators warming up before the hunt. And when they exhale, their breath unravels everything. The deeper we studied their presence, the more horrifying the implications became. This was not a singular creature. This was a species, a form of life unlike anything we had classified, possibly older than light itself, and governed by a metabolism that inverted our understanding of existence. These beings did not seek territory, resources, or power. They sought proximity to radiance, like moths to flame, except they weren't consumed by it. They thrived in it. Preliminary simulations, based on the decay rates of surrounding matter after each encounter, suggested that their exhalation, the darkness, was not merely a cloud or a field. It was a phase state of matter and antimatter collapse, woven with exotic particles that defied electromagnetic behavior. In simple terms, they weren't exhaling smoke. They were breathing out annihilation, a kind of subatomic undoing that spread like ink in water, infecting not just space, but probability itself. Even more unsettling was what happened when we introduced artificial light to the data models. These beings responded, mildly, passively, but they responded. Their chests, or whatever served that function, seemed to expand subtly toward the radiation source, even if it wasn't a natural star. They hungered for it, instinctively drawn to warmth and illumination. Our brightest beacons, solar arrays, mining flares, fusion reactors, were like breadcrumbs to them. And worse still, their movement through space did not obey thrust or orbit. They didn't travel. They glided. Propulsion was irrelevant. They simply appeared closer with each observation. Not instantly, just subtly, imperceptibly, until they were near. There were theories, of course. Some suggested they were the remnants of a dead universe, survivors of a cosmic reset, feeding on what our reality still had left to offer. Others believed they were not feeding at all, but cleansing, removing stars one by one in preparation for something far greater, a kind of entropy farming, where light was a contaminant and they were the immune response. But the most haunting theory was the one nobody wanted to say out loud. That we, creatures of photosynthesis and electricity and flame, might simply be incompatible. Not because of morality or conquest, but because of biology. Because if we breathe oxygen and exhale carbon, then what we exhale might be deadly to another species. And vice versa. To them, our world is poisonously bright. Our star, soul, is a banquet. Our cities, pulsing with artificial light, are not signs of civilization. They are invitations. And then, they answered. Not with words. Not with a ship. But with absence. One day, all solar observatories between Mercury and Mars detected a sudden fluctuation in light readings, not a flare, not a dip. A flicker. A shudder. The kind of anomaly that only happens when something massive moves between us and the sun. But nothing was visible. Satellites registered no thermal bloom, no gravitational shift, no impact trajectory. Just a change in light quality, as if something had breathed in just enough to taste our star. And then let it go. For now. The response from Earth was swift: panic in the scientific communities, total blackout in public communication, and the launch of deep sky probes with instructions never to return. But it didn't matter. Because by then, the data was clear. They know we're here. They've always known. And perhaps the only reason we've survived this long is because the sun is still young, still burning too fast, too hot, too violently for them to approach comfortably. But it won't be like that forever. One day, the sun will stabilize. Its flares will settle. Its surface will quiet. And when it does, they'll come closer. Not out of malice. Not out of conquest. But because we are in the way. Because the light that gives us life is the very thing they need to survive. And when they exhale, we will not burn. We will not scream. We will not even know it happened. We will simply disappear. Like a shadow at sunrise.